Welcome, friends. You are listening to Conversations with Consequences, the weekly radio show and podcast of the Catholic Association, where you get witty and charming conversation about the topics that matter to you with the leading thinkers of our time. I'm your hostess, Dr. Gracie Christie, and I am joined by my colleague at the Catholic Association, our legal eagle, Andrea Picciotti-Bayer. Hello, Andrea.
Hey, Gracie. How are you doing?
Very well. Today we're broadcasting from Miami and D.C.
We're bilocating here at Conversations with Consequences, which is
I was going to say
perfect.
bi-coastal, but that is not the term. There's a term, and I don't know it. If you're listening on the radio, you are listening at 11 a.m. on Fridays on the Guadalupe Radio Network. And if not, you're listening to our podcast wherever you get your podcast and for free. You can subscribe at thecatholicassociation.org/podcasts, and you can just find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, you name it, and we're there. Today we have a very special show because we have a friend with us, a good friend of ours. She's come into the D.C. studio. We're lucky that she was in D.C. today. She's normally in New York City, although she's all over the place all the time. So I'm talking about our good friend, Kathryn Jean Lopez. She's a senior fellow at the National Review Institute, where she directs the Center for Religion, Culture, and Civil Society. She's also the editor at large of National Review. She was on the editorial staff of National Review Online since 1997. She's a nationally syndicated columnist, and she's been all over the place. She's been in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, she's been in First Things, the Stars and Stripes. She wrote a great book called How to Defend the Faith Without Raising Your Voice, and has contributed to several books. Today we're here. We asked her to talk to us today about a recent book that she wrote, but we're going to talk about that a little later. And now we're just going to talk to her about her work at National Review. Welcome, Kathryn.
Hi, Gracie. Hi, Andrea. So good to be on the show.
Oh,
Thank you for all the work
us.
that you do in the world.
Oh, please. Thank you. We're here to talk about your work.
Well, you all are just such bright lights, and I'm so glad to be here with you.
Oh,
well,
that's
and
too kind.
great that you came for a second time. This is
we
were bringing back memories. The first time you joined us was in our very initial episodes of Conversations with Consequences, which Gracie lovingly calls our Titanic voyage.
Our maiden Titanic voyage.
Yeah,
so thank you for
I was
trusting
in Rome,
us again.
And I think I had the wrong hour, and we had beautiful bells in the background.
It was wonderful.
Well, thankfully, there were no casualties in our Titanic maiden voyage, thankfully. And we've improved very much. We're learning to navigate around those icebergs.
And you have some wonderful guests and conversations.
Oh my gosh, isn't that true?
Yeah.
No, and the hostess with the mostest is what I think is one of my favorite parts of this.
What we're trying to do, and Kathryn, you're the perfect person to do this with. We're trying to go a little deeper. We're trying to go a little deeper than people usually do, especially in radio shows. There's not a lot of time to delve into a subject comfortably in a way that we can really get all those little the details that really are the most interesting thing.
You know, I was interested in using this first portion of our conversation to talk about and answer the question, who is Kathryn Jean Lopez? and I think that there are so many people.
Please tell me.
No, you have to respond. I am a daughter of God.
She's waiting to find out.
I am a daughter of
Right.
God. No, but beyond being a beloved daughter of God, there's an incredible kind of experience that you are having in this world and sharing with the rest of the world. And it starts at this great publication that you seem to be leading in a great, wonderful, beautiful direction, National Review. And I thought it could be great to talk a little bit about how you got started there, the colleagues that you work with, the history that you've had there, and where you see you're bringing, and your colleagues are bringing, our understanding of what's going on in the world today to people who are thirsty for more information and not just breaking news, but understanding where we are and where we can go.
Well, I grew up reading National Review and seeing Bill Buckley on firing line. Bill Buckley, of course, founded National Review in 1955. And I was watching Fire and Line even when I didn't quite understand what Bill was talking about. He was famous for words that you have to look up in the dictionary. So it wasn't a rare thing for people to have a dictionary nearby. It was before you could Google the definition. But I always loved National Review. And so when I had the opportunity to start working there was an opening. I was interning at the Heritage Foundation, and somebody told me about an opening at National Review. They needed somebody to answer the phones in the Washington office. And that was with my dear friend, Cato Byrne, was the Washington editor of National Review, the late Cato Byrne. Anyway, I did wind up having just about every job there is at National Review over the years, and including editor of the website when websites were really first taking off.
That was very early days for that website, National Review Online. Yeah,
as I recall, it was the famous Bush v. Gore year where it really took off.
Yeah.
We'd been using it, making use of it, probably. There's an editorial section in the front with little paragraphs, editorial paragraphs of the print magazine, and the way that we put that together is there's a Monday editorial meeting and people propose topics we should write on, and then there are assignments handed out, and if you were the lowest kids on the totem pole kind of thing, usually you'd write your paragraph and it would not get used. And so we started posting them on the website. That's the first. So I was first published as, on the reject slot on the website.
Now it's the best,
well,
right?
Now some younger people say, oh, wait, you have a print magazine? Yes, we have a print magazine. Please buy it. That's, we need subscribers here.
How many people, Kathryn, I'm sorry to interrupt, but how many people look at your website? What kind of reach do you have?
Well, you know what? You've caught me on something, I have to say. Oh, I'm not actually sure. Because I, a number of years ago, retired from being editor of the website. And I'll talk about that in a second. And I am terrible at numbers. So that I took that as I don't have to pay attention to the numbers anymore. And we have a lot of people, trust me, that are reading the website.
But it's important to say that it is a very important website for conservative readers. For readers of any kind, I think. People go to the National Review to really find real news.
And
real analysis and...
Well, and I do, there was a moment before everyone went totally insane politically where people would go to National Review Online to see what conservatives were thinking. But I'd like to think that's still the case. I know because people are so on edge and angry, and I shouldn't throw around words like insane, but I'm obviously speaking of the angst and
political insanity,
anger and despair. Even people are feeling about politics and anger at the other side and all these things. But so sometimes people will come up to me and say, why will National Review not give Donald Trump any credit? But we have Victor Davis Hanson, who just wrote the case for Trump.
I was just going to say that.
We have all kinds writing. David French was considering primarying Donald Trump. Yes, so we have two distinct voices who are both conservatives, and I think that's one of the great things that National Review has always been. You have people who agree on some basic fundamentals about life, but then have a robust debate. And Bill, when we I talk about fundamentals. Bill was a Catholic, and that's and it was something that was the worldview with which he wrote and spoke and lived. And I remember when he died 11 years ago, I was editor of the website at the time, so I made the first announcement on the corner, our blog, about his death. And so people started sending me their testimonies. And I had a couple of priests write me who said that he influenced their vocations because he talked about the faith regularly, and it was a part of who he was. And he had Mother Teresa on Firing Line one time. He would always have Malcolm Muggeridge, the English journalist who was a convert, to talk about faith. he just regularly had guests talking about religion, and for him, it was so much, including the United States, just pointed back to Bethlehem, and he would say that in speeches, and so.
What do you mean by that, Kathryn?
That we are created by a God who had the humility to come here, and be among us and share in our sufferings and redeem us. And we'll talk more about this, I think, later on. But part of the reason that I could get away with spending time writing a book, putting a book together on mystics, is because in his book on faith, Nearer My God, Bill Buckley talked about mysticism and an Italian mystic who's not necessarily church approved. And one of his priest friends sort of cringed when he included her, Maria Valtorta. Oh, yeah. But what he said is when he read her writings, he understood the passion differently. He understood the crucifixion differently. It became more a part of his life, and so he was grateful for her, and he shared her in the book because if she helped him, maybe she'd help somebody else. And so when I went to compile the book, actually, Archbishop Gomez from Los Angeles, a number of years ago, that we were both speakers at a conference on Dorothy Day, and he had a line that I love. He said, "I don't know if Dorothy Day is a saint, but I know she makes me want to be one." And
what a good line.
Well, and with Bill Buckley, once he died, I of course had read so much of what he had written at various times and as I said, watched Firing Line and things. But when he died, at some point I was asked within a year to be a part of a conference, and I was supposed to talk about him as a Catholic journalist. And so I had in my mind I was going to read everything Bill Buckley ever wrote about the Catholic Church, and I'm still discovering things. Or still have a pile to read.
Do you see your position at National Review, Kathryn, as continuing that legacy?
Yeah, well, and yes, I hope so. And in particular, when I did move on from being editor of the website and paying attention, my life used to be paying attention to the news 24/7 and trying to keep ahead of it, and
live tweeting.
Yes, yeah, right, yeah, no, and now every once in a while, I realized a couple of weeks ago there was one of the Democratic debates, and I had scheduled a dinner.
Great.
Yes, that's exactly what I said. I don't have to watch it. And we have a whole bunch of people back at the office watching it and commenting on, and I can read the highlights later. We have a nonprofit as well, think tank, the National Review Institute, in addition to the magazine. And Bill founded that too. And it's had various iterations during its lifespan. But right now, it is part of the future of what the magazine business looks like, is having a robust nonprofit support where you're doing panel discussions and dinners and
those cruises.
And convenings.
That's awesome.
Well, there are cruises too.
Well, Kathryn, one of the things you do in the Institute is you've done a lot of work on adoption and foster care, and I know because
you've
Andrea
been my speaker,
right? But both Andrea and I have participated,
too.
and those have been really fabulous. I've really admired the way that you've taken the Institute, the National Review Institute, has taken this, a real. An initiative. It's a really fabulous initiative to connect the dots between the needs of children and the solution, which is adoption and foster care.
Well, so at the National Review Institute, I'm a director of the Center for Religion, Culture, and Civil Society. And part of what I do there is these sort of convenings and briefings. We did a briefing for our organization. Both of you were a part of fairly recently. And one of the reasons, and also part of what I do is emphasize some of the faith tradition that has always been a part of National Review because of Bill, and I think that's really important right now as people are feeling so anxious and are frankly addicted to politics. I used to like I said, I used to pay attention to the news 24/7. But when I was a child, I was like watching C-SPAN, and I was a total dork. And I used to wish. No, I'm still a dork, but in different ways. But I used to wish, like, why aren't more people paying attention to this? Right? This is so important. And yes, it's important. But now the entire nation is addicted to this reality TV show that we're watching. And people are angry and they can't stop talking. The number of times people have a conversation with, can you believe Donald Trump had lunch with X? Or these are things that...
Yeah, stop.
Stop. Get a hobby. I mean,
and despair, right? There's despair, there's anger, there's frustration,
and
there's too much passion.
It's important to be informed. I'm not, obviously, and I want people to read National Review, and I hope we'll give you a good sense of what's going on in analysis.
But what I like, Kathryn, about the National Review, and especially online, is that it isn't jarring breaking news, right? Some of the other news outlets, everything is breaking. So everything needs to consume your attention completely right now. Instead, it offers a chance for a little bit more leisurely analysis.
And we do
reader.
have a breaking news section. And you mentioned our cruises. I actually talked to a couple who said that they get all their breaking news from National Review, and I that was an encouragement to the kids in the office who do the breaking news part. But yes,
but it's not like the world is consumed by whatever we think is important right now in this moment. It's a chance to kind of step back and like everyone used to take the Sunday newspaper, right, and sit back and think about what had happened in the week previous or what was going to be happening in the week coming. What I also think I really appreciate in talking about the founding of National Review is, although its founder was 100% all-in Catholic, it's not a Catholic publication. Right. It's a publication that I'm sure your colleagues
all kinds. Yeah.
And you're bringing, you personally are bringing the leaven of faith into your work, and in many ways. Ways that I very much appreciate, you bring the teachings of the Church and the life of a faithful Catholic in a very comfortable way.
Well, one thing that is really neat about NR is there actually are a number of Catholics who are writing about other things, but I think are attracted to National Review because they know that this is a place where their views will be welcome, and it's that filter.
Not hostile.
It's not hostile, and
right.
that filter that I was talking about, the lens with which Bill viewed the world, it's not unanimously shared, but there's a recognition of its value, at least, and a gratitude. Bill Buckley, that's another thing that Bill Buckley was all about, and we have a regional fellows program at the National Review Institute in various cities, including D.C. and New York and Philadelphia, Chicago, San Francisco, Dallas. I think I have them all now. Chicago, it's our first year there. This year, but so it's for young professionals basically to learn about conservative principles and hopefully then have more educated conversations with people about politics.
So it's the pebble in the pond, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I every year do the last session. People come in and talk to them, and they have a conversation around dinner. And I talk to them about gratitude, which is always really great. And often, actually, for some of the cities, it happens right before Thanksgiving. It's literally the week before Thanksgiving. It's perfect. Nice. But also, I actually appreciate when it's not Thanksgiving time because people should give thanks all the time. But Bill was so much about gratitude. In fact, he wrote a book about gratitude where he actually had a very provocative proposal that everybody have to do mandatory public service because he felt it was so important for people to give back and appreciate the gifts that they've been given and be good stewards. And that's one of the main questions I think we're facing today when we're talking not just about politics, but maybe just about everything. Like, are we being a good steward of these gifts? I loved the Catholic Association's amicus brief, right? But in that Catholic school case in Montana, because Catholic schools are something we need. And I know they're not all perfect, but some of the testimonies, Andrea, that you had, spoke to the best of Catholic education. can save people's lives, can bring people back to the church. It can save a marriage.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
That is so true.
Some of those stories. But that's about stewardship, right?
Yeah.
We're the ones here right now. Are there going to be Catholic schools when we leave or not,
Well, and what are they
So
going to
much
look
is
like?
up to us.
Are they going to
Right.
still have that same missionary
Right.
zeal?
Right.
And not only to impart the faith, but also to make the communities and the neighborhoods where they're working and operating better.
Right. And that's why I love some of the programs that have been popping up recently, like the Alliance for Catholic Education at the University of Notre Dame, where they literally train these kids to be missionaries and go out and be teachers in inner city and rural schools and schools that really need the help, and places where kids really and families really need Catholic schools to have that missionary zeal.
Yeah.
Kathryn, how do you decide what you're going to be writing about next? What motivates you? Or how do you have like a list of priorities that you want to attack, or how does that work?
It's a mix of a lot of things. I usually have a list of things that I want to write about, but I also have deadlines, regular deadlines, and so
those deadlines.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're a blessing in as much as you may never get anything written if you didn't have the deadline. But sometimes, because as you were mentioning earlier, I'm traveling a lot, and which is a combination of speaking and some of these convenings we were talking about, and reporting trips, and so sometimes I look around at my computer and what's the most recent interview I did, and how can I weave that into the news?
Well, the other thing that I've seen in your recent writing, and I'm sure it's been for a long time in your career, as you're traveling all over and meeting tons of people, there are moments in which there's inspiration. Either someone that you meet or some kind of interaction that you've had or something that happens, and that's kind of, it's very helpful because it is a good reminder to all of us, open your eyes.
Yeah.
You never know the lesson that's being given to you while you're waiting in an airport, or while you're chit-chatting or observing somebody who's phenomenal and exceptional in their own life and marveling at their fortitude or their wisdom.
And it's the facility. It's the facility with which you put that into those inspirations into your writing, and the way that people can then receive that inspiration themselves that makes Kathryn Jean Lopez's work so special. So with that, we have to take a little break. We'll be right back, and we'll continue talking on Conversations with Consequences with Kathryn Jean Lopez of National Review. Welcome back, friends. I am your hostess, Dr. Gracie Christie of the Catholic Association, and this is your radio show and podcast of the Catholic Association. We are in double studio today. I'm in Miami, and I'm joined in D.C. by my colleague and friend at the Catholic Association, Andrea Picciotti-Bayer. Hello, Andrea.
Hey, Gracie. As I said before, I think we're bilocating, which is a perfect way to do this conversation about this book.
Fine, but I think that's the wrong word. I don't think that means what you think it means.
No, I think the Conversations with Consequences is bilocating. It's in Miami and in Washington.
Okay, I'm going to go with that.
Right?
But
Go
we're
with that?
bilocating.
Because I'm not bilocating. You're there and I'm here.
And we're
Catherine's
very
next to me.
fortunate. We're very fortunate because Kathryn Jean Lopez of National Review happened to be in D.C. doing something important. She's always traveling, doing important things, and she lent us a little bit of her time. She came into the D.C. studio, and we're very happy to have our friend Kathryn Jean Lopez. Hello, Kathryn.
Hello. I actually have been praying to be able to bilocate for a long time.
I have been too.
Because I figure I wouldn't have to be on planes as much.
I think you actually do bilocate.
I really don't.
Well, why stop there, Kathryn?
Although
trilocate.
There was, this is a long story that I won't get into, but I didn't go to Bill Buckley's memorial service because I was already scheduled to go to Rome with our friend Ann Corkery for the first time. I had never been to Rome before.
Wow.
And Kate O'Byrne convinced me that Bill Buckley would want me to go to Rome.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring it up is that I did go to Rome, and I'm so glad I did. And but a couple of weeks later, someone came up to me and said, I'm so sorry. I saw you from across the room at Bill's memorial at St. Patrick's Cathedral, but we didn't get to talk. And I thought,
I was there.
But no, I wasn't there.
Well, you do.
He confused me with some other brunette.
I think I've seen pictures of you on that trip.
You may have.
I think I have.
Yeah, because...
Were you with Father Landry?
We were with Father Landry. That was when I first met Father Landry, in fact. And my goodness, for him to show you Rome for the first time is just such a blessing. And Kate O'Byrne, our late friend Kate O'Byrne, was there. And so when Kate died, I shared a lot of photos from that trip. So that's where you would see it.
Yes, that looked like a wonderful time.
Yeah, it was a really
fabulous time, a life-changing time.
It was totally life-changing.
I don't know if you know, Kathryn, but Father Landry, every time we have our weekly show, he gives us a short homily to preview the next Sunday's gospel, and we're so fortunate because he's a homiletic. He's out of control with his homilies.
Yeah, I was thinking going to Rome must have been exhausting because he probably showed you everything. He knows everything.
Well, and actually the thing about that too is that I think some of the women who were with me wanted to shut me down a couple of times because they were very patient with me. I was very enthusiastic and I wanted to see everything.
I can just imagine you.
I wanted all of Father Landry's footnotes, you know. Oh, no, tell us more, Father.
You were probably recording him, Kathryn, as he was speaking. You had your little recorder out.
You know, actually, I think I was so immersed in prayer and wonder, and I wasn't doing that time. But gosh, it was he is such a gift. I actually was at his 10,000th Mass. I don't know if you've talked about on the air, but first of all, I thought it was so incredible that he knew that he had celebrated 10,000 Masses. But I happened to know I was in the same town, so I emailed him the night before and crashed the Sisters of Life convent that day. And
always good to crash their convent.
Yes, we share that fundamental belief.
Kathryn, maybe that trip to Rome led eventually to this book I'm holding in my hand, which we want to talk to you about.
Yeah, because as I mentioned before, I mean, it's partially because of Bill Buckley that I ever got into the position where I would do that. And I really actually prayed a lot. I remember because I was sort of sad. I was sad that I wasn't at his memorial because he was somebody I knew and loved and learned from and had really gotten to know actually after his wife died because I just while I think other people still wanted the brilliant Bill Buckley to download all this information for them. I saw a broken-hearted man, and so I think he appreciated. I just let him talk about whatever he wanted to, and I sort of tried to encourage him and things like that. And so I really had actually like a grandfather kind of relationship toward the end with him. Yeah. But so when I was in Rome, I really prayerfully, really, at night would read through Near My God. I had reread it that trip. And so I have no doubt that Rome experience played a role in this book that now exists, A Year with the Mystics.
Well, let me tell our listeners about this book. It's called A Year with the Mystics, Visionary Wisdom for Daily Living. And it's a beautiful book. Kathryn just informed me that it's imitation leather because I was sure it was real leather. It's a
really good imitation. It's
one of those
bound,
books.
Beautifully bound.
It's the kind of thing. It's the kind of book you pass on to your. Okay, so that maybe this is going to sound strange. I have a couple of books that my grandmother gave me. One of them is a missal of her daughter who died young, a Latin missal. And they're beautifully, these old books are beautifully bound, and they're not books you drop off when you're tired of them, you drop them off at the library carousel that's what I do with my old books. I put them in the library, the return thing. I'm sure that's wrong. But I figure somebody can use them there.
I don't think that's like a sin you need to confess.
No? Okay.
No,
sharing.
A good book can be shared, especially with the greater
I'm
reading
being scrupulous. But this is the kind of book that once you get your hands on it, you can never. Maybe you leave it to somebody, or you give it as a gift when you go on ahead to your reward. But it's a 300-something page book. It looks like leather. It's got that supple binding. The edges of the book are gold leaf or gold. Yeah, they look like gold leaf, and it has one of those nice placeholders. And that's just to talk about the outside of the book. It's a very satisfying book from the outside and to hold in your hands. But the inside is even more satisfying.
Kathryn, when you first got into studio, you were surprised because I have a big 3-ring binder with a PDF printout of the book, and I've written all over it. And the reason was because when I knew that we were going to have a chance to look at the book, read it, and then speak with you, I said to Gracie, I can't wait to start writing all over it. Because
and
that's,
I said,
and she said,
this is not the kind of book you write on, Andrea.
And because I can't stop myself from writing and Post-it notes and highlights and scribbling on the sides, I see that you've actually done that. So
with my own book,
with her own book, it's a disaster. It's a disaster.
Already a disaster.
But
I'm not going to be reading mine in the shower. That's what I normally do to my books.
Oh, goodness. So
I won't even ask the doctor about the physics of that.
But the great thing about this book, and I'd like you to share with us how it came about, and then we can talk a little bit about how it's already affected us.
But, maybe first, Kathryn, explain to our listeners how it works, how the book works, because the book works.
Okay. Well, so it's called A Year with the Mystics. And it's actually, so for a number of years, St. Benedict's Press, the publisher, has been publishing a series that's one-a-day meditations, basically. And so they have a year with the Church Fathers, and a year with the saints, and a year with Mary, and a year with the Eucharist. And I had interviewed an author or two of the series. And Paul Thigpen I think, did the Saints and Mary and maybe one other one. And he also was an editor at the time at St. Benedict's Press. And I said, you guys really need a year with, I think I proposed the women mystics at the time. And they said, no, I think the year with a year with the mystics, men and women, and you should do it. And I'm like, okay, well,
That's a step too far.
Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. I'm thinking, well, that would be a beautiful thing to do, but I don't think I have time to do that. And how do you immerse yourself in the mystics while you're doing all your regular jobs and deadlines and things? But I joke that I selfishly said yes on one level because we're all friends here and we joke about the size of my purse.
Yeah.
And around that time, I was carrying around there's this great series from from Paulist Press where that's called the Classics of Western Civilization, Western Spirituality. I'm sorry, Classics of Western Spirituality, and they're these big volumes. So on a given day, I'd say, I might have time while I'm commuting or
volume 10.
Yeah, so let me grab
7.
Bridget of Sweden and Catherine of Siena. Oh wait, and I could read a letter or two from St. Francis de Sales and Jane de Chantal.
And your purse does not have wheels on it.
Yeah,
I've seen your bag, Kathryn.
Yes,
It's a bag of wonders.
It is.
Book wonders.
But now it has fewer of those big volumes because I've put them all in the one volume. So I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't really open the book until a couple of days before it came out because I was afraid of finding typos.
Oh no.
Which I haven't found mercifully yet, but I'm sure I will, and it'll be good for my humility. But nobody's reported one yet. But when I started to open it, I had this deep gratitude for the fact that I'm getting to share these meditations that have had such a deep impact on me. And when I started opening it and reading through them again, I thought, oh, that's why I shared it. And then I found myself praying with them all over again. And at different points when you read these things, different things will occur to you, and God will use them in different ways. So it's not like the kind of thing. So it is a year with, and there's day 1, day 2. They're marked. But as I say early in the book, use it however you feel called to. If it's just a book you have on your nightstand, and you make it a point to every night open it up and see what page you open to and pray with that. It's I think it'll be helpful, especially if you're looking for some peace and some spiritual nourishment, and also at this time of scandal in the church, I think this is particularly helpful and maybe a gift to us all. And I say that, again, as somebody who sort of stumbled into doing this. It's a gift to me that I can have this volume and read through it. All these beautiful men and women who were present at different parts of the history of the church, many of them not pretty times of the church, who had this deep love of Jesus and really started, because they gave God time, they started to get to know each person of the Trinity. They really got to know Mary. And we have these people as intercessors, and that cloud of witnesses idea at a time where we have this epidemic of loneliness, this epidemic of suicide, to know that we're not alone, whatever your circumstances are. You've got all these intercessors in heaven who lived in this world. They struggled. They had all the same doubts and fears and to know that, to read, I think it's a great comfort. And it helps with confidence to read how God works similarly with a lot of these people. You can trust so many of these fruits of prayer because you see the familiar God in them, And I should mention, too, there are a couple of people who are alive still in here, including a priest from New York, Father Donald Haggerty, who writes beautifully about the spiritual life. He has a couple of books from Ignatius Press. I believe I included something from his latest book, Conversion, which I think is just a particularly important word and concept. I think we do ourselves a disservice because we often think of conversion as,
falling off a horse.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Or entering into a whole new religion.
Exactly. And then it's over.
Yeah.
It's one fiat.
Our big moment.
It's one
Our big
yes.
moment.
Exactly. But
it's a daily.
Every hour of every day. Yeah. Right. Always calling upon the Holy Spirit and asking for guidance in everything we do, including, we were joking before the show about or sharing, actually in some amazement about conversations that you can have with Uber drivers sometimes. It's just amazing how hungry people are, especially sometimes, I'll be getting into an Uber to go to a mass somewhere, and so I'm going to a church, or I was staying with the Little Sisters of the Poor the other day, so an Uber driver asked, "Can I ask you a question? Why is this place called the Little Sisters of the Poor? What is that exactly?"
Yeah.
And so he was fascinated
everything's an invitation.
Everything's an invitation.
There is a lot of hunger.
There is so much hunger, and if we're spending time with God ourselves, we can share Him. If we're getting to know Him deeper, better, constantly, we can help people to. I mean, even the other day in New York, some Uber driver asked me, and we weren't even talking about anything. I was just smiling at him and asking him how his day was, and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Here." Grew up in Manhattan. And he said, "There's no way that's possible. You have to be from the Midwest or something."
Darn right.
People from New York, aren't nice. You seem like a decent person.
No, there's tons of decent people. You can have
decent people in Manhattan.
Tons of decent people in
Father
New York.
Roger Landry lives in Manhattan.
Tons of
the Sisters of Life, New York's finest, are in New York. But there's so
Kathryn,
many beautiful people.
I want to share with our listeners how the book is arranged, because it's really beautifully arranged. So it's 365 days, the days of the year, and I've been using it. I've been taking it to my prayer. So it has so for instance, day 156. The title is "Helpless Without God," and it has a quote from St. Pio,
and one of the great mystics. Right?
One of the great mystics. So it has a quote. So, for instance, it says, "You must not be disheartened or sink into sadness if your actions do not attain the perfection you intended. What do you expect? We are all fragile. We are earth, and not every plot of land produces the fruit intended by the farmer. Let us always humble ourselves after our failures, recognizing that we are completely helpless without divine assistance." That's just a small quote from what is a paragraph of Padre Pio. And then, so then it says, in God's presence, consider, and you have a little sentence, could this letter of spiritual direction be written for me today? And that's supposed to touch off, and it does. It works perfectly. It touches off half an hour of reflection or 15 minutes of reflection, of prayer, of communing. Maybe we're in church, maybe we're in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and we're able to, bring that beautiful reflection of Padre Pio to this. And then there's a closing prayer. Keep me from descending into sadness. Keep me in your joy, no matter the cross or loss or cost. So I've been doing this now for about 10 days, I think is when I got the book and I opened it on Twitter. I tried to do one of those unwrappings with a little video. I loved that. Which was fun. It wasn't very professional looking, but it was fun. And I've been using it, and it's really informed my prayer life. It's been wonderful, really lit up lights in my heart.
Well, Kathryn, I want to share, too, my experience with the binder. Because I've kept the unwrapped.
Which is beautiful in its own way.
It is, and part of it is my prayer life as the mother of many often is focused on each of my little beautiful treasures. And I took your book and I thought, what day of the year is each one of my kids' birthdays? And then I passed the pages until I got to, the first birthdays and prayed for that child using that prayer. And it was incredible.
Oh, wow.
It was really incredible because the challenges that I know that they're facing, or the aspirations that I have for them, or the hopes and dreams that they have for themselves were in that page.
Oh, my goodness.
And I think the book, and you've said this before, the book really can be read in whatever way the Holy Spirit is guiding its reader to read it. It can be, the first day of the year, and you should gift it to people for Christmas. Or it can be wherever the Spirit is guiding you. And one good lesson that I think we've learned from the mystics is when you completely empty yourself, then you can have that conversation, I guess, or God can speak to you. And obviously I'm not completely emptying myself enough. I still have so many things in the way, but it was a great tool, I think, for really growing deeper in this prayer that all of us are called, this union that all of us are called in whatever station in life we have with God. So I am super thankful.
Kathryn, sometimes when people see the word mystic on the cover of a book, they get overawed. They say, "Well, I'm not even going to understand." Why should people approach this book knowing that it works for them, for anybody?
Well, part of what I pray happens with this book is it demystifies mysticism a little bit. A number of years ago, a friend of mine, Gary Jansen, wrote a little book for Loyola Press, I believe, on the Stations of the Cross using Ignatian spirituality. And anyway, Jennifer Fulwiler, another author who's a friend of both of us, wrote the introduction for the book. And she said the first time she met Gary Jansen, she realized she was in the presence of a mystic. And so you can almost hear the music, ooh, And in fact, I gave the book as a present to someone who said, you have a friend who's a mystic? And the Catechism actually talks about how we're all called to this, because mysticism is simply union with God. That's the goal of our lives, to get to heaven and be in complete union with God. And in our prayer, we're invited to keep going deeper. And so I so love what you were saying, Andrea, about making it part of your family experience and bringing your family into it, because I was in particular thinking of mothers with small children who are running around and don't know when they can find a quiet moment. And often it's only in the shower, if you can actually take a shower.
Laminate this book.
Laminate this book. And so my hope was that for people who are feeling anxious, so desirous of a little more quiet, a little more prayer time, a little more being able to hear what God is asking of them, and getting his guidance, I hope this is a step-by-step, day-by-day way to do it in the heart of the church with all these beautiful people.
Well, it's absolutely going to work for all of our listeners. Kathryn, where can people find your book?
So it's available on Amazon.com and at the St. Benedict's Press book site, Tan Books.
Well, thank you so much, Kathryn. It's been a delightful conversation.
It was wonderful.
We love your
This
book.
was so much fun.
We love you.
God bless you, Poe.
And you're going to make mystics of all of us.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on Conversations with Consequences. Every morning, the Catholic Association reviews all the latest news and sends our subscribers a carefully curated collection of the most important news of the day. Items are specifically selected for a smart Catholic audience like you. Don't let the world take you by surprise. Subscribe to our daily media roundup at thecatholicassociation.org. And this week, as is customary, Father Roger Landry will give us a short but brilliant homily on this coming Sunday's Gospel. Please stay tuned for Father Landry and do look up his daily homily, written in audio, on his website, catholicpreaching.com.
This is Father Roger Landry, and it's a joy to have a chance to ponder with you the consequential conversation Jesus wants to have with us this Sunday. It's an unforgettable gospel. Jesus tells us the story of a poor man named Lazarus at the gate of a rich man who sumptuously fed on 3 meals a day, but did nothing to feed Lazarus, who was starving at his gates. Then Jesus says that Lazarus went to the bosom of Abraham, an image of heaven, and the rich man to hell. Who among us is not moved when we envision Lazarus covered with sores, being licked and molested by dogs, longing to eat just the crumbs from the rich man's table? Who among us is not moved by the desperation of the rich man after he dies, dying of torment, thirst, worried about his brothers? What moves us all the more is not simply the state each is in, but the fact that each was avoidable. The rich man went to hell not because he had earned his money in an immoral way, not because he had been asked by Lazarus for help and refused, not because he had sent dogs to lick Lazarus' wound, or had done anything evil to him at all. He went to hell because he simply ignored Lazarus at his gate. He was condemned not because of anything he had done, but precisely because of what he hadn't. He was so caught up in himself that he didn't make any effort at all to help out a man who was struggling and dying in his midst. So many Catholics are accustomed to thinking about how God wants them to change simply in terms of bad behavior they know he wants them to cut out. We think about sin in terms of commissions, the evil thoughts we have, the wicked, malicious, or mendacious words we say, the evil deeds we commit. But as we note at the confession of sins at the beginning of Mass, these are not all the sins we commit. We say to Almighty God and to each other that we have sinned in our thoughts and our words and what we have done and what we have failed to do. We don't often focus enough on what we have failed to do. It's not enough not for us to do evil, but we also have to do good, to seek to sacrifice ourselves for those who are needy, to look out at them, to identify their needs, and to see what we can do to remedy them. When we look at Jesus' story, we see something about the rich man who went to hell. Even when he was in hell, he thought that he should be served by others. He asked Abraham to send Lazarus to dip his finger in water to cool his tongue, and then to have him go to his family to warn them not to make the same mistakes he had made. He thought that if even someone from the dead went to his family members, they would believe. But Abraham in the parable for Jesus said that if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, if they don't listen to the Old Testament, for example, they won't listen even if someone should return to them from the dead. That's a very powerful thing for us. We actually have had someone return from the dead as an exclamation point on the truth of everything being said in today's gospel. Jesus is that risen one who speaks to us about the importance of taking seriously the people who are in need in our midst, and not just not doing something to them when they ask us, but going out of ourselves precisely in order to be able to care. For example, most of us have 3 squares a day, but there are many who don't. How seriously do we take that? Many of us have homes, others don't. Does that cause us to lose sleep? Most of us have had solid educations. Most don't have adequate access. Many don't have adequate access to education. Do we want to do something about that? Most of us have health care. Some don't. Most of us have family members and friends who love and care for us. Others don't have anyone. What are we prepared to do? Jesus had said that when he comes to judge us, he'll say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angel. Because I was hungry and you gave me no food, thirsty you gave me no drink, naked you gave me no clothes, stranger and you gave me no welcome, ill and in prison and you didn't care for me." The condemned will ask, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, thirsty, naked, ill, a stranger, or in prison, and not minister to your needs?" Jesus said he'll reply, "As often as you fail to do this to one of the least of my brothers and sisters, you fail to do it to me." Today, Jesus is preparing us for a consequential conversation in which, hearing his words, he wants us to respond, learning the lesson of the rich man, and going out to care for him in the distressing disguise of all the Lazaruses in our midst. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Father Landry. It's time to say goodbye. And this is Conversations with Consequences, the podcast and radio show of the Catholic Association. I'm your hostess, Dr. Gracie Christie. Today, I was joined by my legal friend at the Catholic Association, Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, and we had the delight of having Kathryn Jean Lopez of National Review with us, telling us about her book, A Year with the Mystics.
Kathryn joins us as yet another repeat offender on Conversations with Consequences. And I can't recommend more her beautiful book. It's not only pleasing to look at, but it's pleasing to contemplate the words of these beautiful mystics and to steal away that little bit of time. It's not a lot. And I found it even more enjoyable when done before the Blessed Sacrament. But if you don't have that time, just find a quiet place where you can contemplate these words of people who came before us, Catholics who came before us, and were clearly in a beautiful union with God.
We're going to have a link on our podcast page to where you can buy her book. You can also follow Kathryn on Twitter, at Kathryn Lopez is her Twitter handle. She's
everywhere.
Yeah, but she has these lovely tweets that are always, they always fill you with peace and joy to see the tweets. And sometimes you really need that on Twitter.
Absolutely, especially Catholic Twitter.
Well, it's time to say goodbye, and you've been listening. If you've been listening on the radio, thank you for listening to Conversations with Consequences on the Guadalupe Radio Network, 11 a.m. on Fridays. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast of our show wherever you get your podcasts. You can go to thecatholicassociation.org to subscribe for free and also to sign up for our TCA Clips daily email. Tell your friends about us, and we'll see you next week.